Hello everyone, welcome to the Geoecologist. I am Dr. Krishnanand and you have been watching my videos on various topics of geography, environment and research methodology on my channel, The Geoecologist. So if you are new to this channel, please subscribe to our channel because we are going to cover each and every topic of geography. Now, in today's session on settlement geography, we are going to look into the concept of urban morphology. So it's morphology in terms of urban settlements and various theories of internal structure of cities, that is Hoyt-Ullman, Cities-Harris, Burgess model. So all these models are going to be discussed as well in terms of the urban morphology, its characteristics and also criticism. But before we go ahead, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and do share the videos with others as well. So now let's discuss about the concept of urban morphology and also theories of urban morphology. So first we'll be talking about the conceptual part of urban morphology and its various aspects, and in the later part of this session we'll be talking about the various theories of internal structure of cities, right? So please watch the video till the end where we are going to discuss about the theories and its criticism as well. So now one of the characteristic features of modern cities that we observe is what? High level of internal differentiation. Now what does this mean? It means that if you go to a bigger city, you'll have internal differentiation in terms of what? In terms of its functional attribute. Like there will be a segregation of workplaces, residentials, commercials and several others, right? So you observe this differentiation is available in terms of zonations of these cities, right? In terms of urban functions. So if you move across a city, one passes from one zone to the other zone, changing landscape, right? So if you observe, if you travel from one zone to the other zone, the landscape of the city changes. It means that this is the morphological transformation. So urban morphology is therefore what? It refers to the study of these arrangements. What is this arrangements? Of the residential houses, their layout plan of roads and streets, and most importantly, the internal structure of these cities, that is consisting the entertainment space, community land, marketing area and so on and so forth. So this is what we are going to learn in terms of urban morphology, and there are certain theories which help us to understand the morphological transformation of these cities, right? So it develops along a urban sprawl or expansion of the city. Now if you look into this city image, satellite image of a city, what you observe? There is a central portion here, alongside you have a road, then there is different areas of residences, right? This zone of residence, then again there is this kind of ring here, then there is another ring out here. So what you observe in this settlement? There is a river out here, right? So what do you observe? This settlement is now connected from the central part to the outskirts in different zones through these roads that are now radiating out, right? And also there is a river across which there is a bridge construction and road construction that leads to further expansion of the city in the other portion as well. So what you observe? This is inner ring road, this is outer ring road, there is a city center. So what is this? This is one kind of internal structure of city which you can see in many settlements across India and world as well. So can you give me some example? If you know some example of these kind of cities where you have a center and an inner ring and an outer ring, please write in the comment box and tell us which cities do have this kind of morphology. So now going to the concept. So urban growth process varies over time and space, that we know. And remember, if it varies over time and space, it's important to identify the principles. Why we need to identify principles, right? Because principles would let us to understand how this transformation of the cities happen over space and time, right? So what you observe, the first principle is the sake of accessibility of certain services, right? The accessibility of certain services is the first principle because of which a transformation in urban morphology happens, right? Then the second principle is the differentiation of the main commercial area and the connections of the places alongside it. Right? That is the second principle. Then comes the third principle, that is that certain kinds of services require to be in close proximity while certain do not require that close proximity to the central area of the city. Right? For example, godowns for wholesale goods and depots finding it advantageous to be near transport terminals. So what is this principle talking about? The advantages of these particular settlements being located at a particular places, right? So what you observe, there is a comparative advantage theory inside this particular principle. And then further what you observe is the fourth principle, that morphology of any city is dynamic in nature. It's ever changing in nature. You cannot fix it in a particular frame. So any change in technology, any change in large scale population through migration, it may change the morphology of a city eventually. That's very important principle. So these are the broad principles. Now let's look into the theories of urban morphology. Why these theories are needed? Because in world pattern of urban morphology, if you observe the world cities in Americas, Europe, South Asia, you have differentials. So there are certain theories which try to explain the transformation of these morphology in the cities. So what you observe, the first thing that is to be understood here is the internal differentiation of the cities, which we also know by the theories named internal structure of the cities. And it happens because of the socio-economic causes, socio-economic changes, technological changes. So the first kind of models are called classical models. And remember, when we say classical models, it means we are talking about those cities, those urban places which began with the advent of urbanization during Industrial Revolution. So we observe E.M. Burgess. This scholar, first time from Chicago School of Sociology in 1925, gave the first urban morphology theory, that is internal structure of the city, where his model is called classical model of city structure and city growth. Now, what does this model talk about? Let's understand. So he says that concentric zonation or zonal model of the city is where urban growth happens. It means a city has a concentration at particular point, and alongside there are different zones which can be plotted through concentric circle model. And between these circles, these areas have different land uses. Right? This is the basic idea of his work-based, or we say functional difference-based model of the internal structure or urban morphology. So if you look into this particular Burgess model, through this concentric ring model diagram, what you observe, there are different zones here, and each zone has a unique characteristic or a differential characteristic than the other. So this is areal differentiation alongside what? It is alongside your locational analysis in geography. So central business district is the central place, the central market. Then we have zone of transition between the two. This blue zone is transition zone, if you observe here, right? Then zone of independent workers home in the third one. And then you have better residences, and then you have the commuters zone. So 5-zone model is the Burgess Chicago model, we say concentric ring model. So what is important here? The concentric zone model suggests that cities expand, and what happens? The interaction of people and their economic, social and political organization create rings of urban growth around the center. So these rings of urban growth are created on the principles of social, economic, political interactions, interrelations, and eventually there is a land use unique to every zone. So for example, if city center is the only market, the nearby people are in transition zone, and remember there is a low class residential where laborers and everyday workers who go to these areas of central importance stay there. But then comes a middle class, and then comes the higher class, and then there is a commuter zone. So this is talking about a class struggle. This is talking about a class system, class differentials, which distinguish one class of residential with the other class of residential, primarily on the basis of the interaction of people, which is economic, social and political basis. But there is a criticism involved here that M.R. Davey, another scholar, argues that this is unnatural. Why this is unnatural? Since change is never abrupt. This kind of clear-cut zonations are not available in real world. So this is some kind of a theory which talks about some kind of assumption. It's not real. It's an ideal theory, ideal state. This kind of clear-cut transition is not available. Clear-cut distinction is not available in real world. So what is it? This zonation is questionable, and geographers in general way also agree to homogeneous areas do emerge across the city or alongside the city. But they do not accept the idea that there is a continuous concentric zone as a rule. Right? So this is the criticism of Burgess model as an urban morphological internal structure of theory, where concentric rings are there, but they could not be of this clear-cut defined exact rings that we say in ideal situation that has been plotted. So the next model that evolved from here is in 1939. Now this model was called a sectoral model, and it was given by Homer Hoyt, this gentleman here, alongside the same scholar M.R. Davy. So Homer Hoyt is the pioneer of the sectoral model analysis of the internal structure of the cities, and it takes into account what? It takes into account the movement of people along transportation lines from the center of the city. It means from the central business district, people move out along the lines, and development, that is housing and other infrastructure, develop along these routes, along these transportation lines. So that is where the sectors are created, right? So this model gives a sectoral theory and the differentiation in land use, which is central business district as one, then transportation and industry, low class residential, middle class residential, and high class residential. So this is what is talked in this sectoral model. But remember, urban morphology here is determined primarily by network of routes. So this is majorly talking about the routes, the highways, the freeways, the connection of the old city with the outskirts. That is what is important here. And this model is talking about the city which is never concentric, rather divided into sectors. So can you give me some example of the sectoral model growth where you see in Indian cities at least? So please write in the comment box if you know that which city have this kind of sectoral growth. So you can have some examples. So what is the limitation of this model? The theory does not take into account new concepts of edge cities, suburban development. These concepts we are going to look into separate lecture later on, which began to emerge in 1980s after the cultural turn, the new age transformation. Right? IT revolution. So things transformed gradually. This is not taken in this model. Obviously, it's a 1939 model. And the tradition of central business district has diminished in importance now. Why? Because now there are multiple branches. Not everybody has to go every day to the central business district for the work. So what you observe here, the physical features, the growth of a sector, and also the theory lacks in the idea of the land topography and the changes. So the leapfrog model, for example, this is the center of a city, and in between there is a different land use and there is a smaller center. The city gets connected like this. This kind of thought process of leapfrog is not developed in this sectoral model. So these are certain areas where this theory lacked. Now, next theory in this segment of these theories on internal structure is multiple nuclei model, and which was given by Chauncey Harris and Ullman in 1945 under their book Nature of Cities. Now here Ullman and Harris talks about that what has happened in the recent times post World War II. Here is the greater transformation of cities happening, and there is no single nuclei. It means there is no one CBD. There could be multiple CBDs, right? So if there are multiple CBDs, multiple nuclei, it means the city will grow in a different manner. It will not grow in this concentric ring or maybe sectoral, but it will be a combination of sectoral and concentric ring model, right? So this is kind of a combination theory which applies to major cities of the world and India as well. So here central business district is there, then you have wholesale light manufacturing, then you have low class, medium class, high class residential, then you have heavy manufacturing, heavy consumer goods manufacturing as well, and then outlying business district, the outer districts, right? And then industrial suburbs, residential suburbs. So this theory talks about the transformation of central city outwards and creation of suburban development, the rise of suburbia. This is where this theory also explains the morphological transformation of cities. So what you observe that it's not necessarily for a city to grow around a single business district. Rather, it can grow in differential land use patterns in an agglomerated fashion. So some underlying factors are common which leads to the growth of these particular areas around a nuclei. So certain activities required specialized facilities. So near a port, obviously there will be a growth of a particular kind of residential and commercial hub. Then what will happen? Certain kinds of activities will tend to stay apart. For example, heavy industries and upper class residences, they'll always stay apart from the crowded areas, right? Then what he says is that certain kinds of activities are found together in mutual advantage. So if two activities have a mutual advantage, they will stay at the same place. So this will lead to a particular morphology of a particular city. And the rental rates differ from one area to the other. So remember, rental rates are very important drivers of the socio-economic transformation of urban morphology. So what you observe, these were the classical models. Now there are a separate set of models which are purely economic models of urban morphology. For example, who are the scholars who talk about this? That economy primarily drives the urban morphological characteristics. The writings of Haig, Radcliffe, Alonso in 1964. Remember, this was the time period when quantitative revolutions picked up in geography, rise of economic man, isotropic surface, and several this kind of deductive and several other scientific positivistic theories based on economic models came to geography. So this is where that from a center the distance was taken, and distance, decay factors, gravity model, these things were looked into again. Right? So what you observe, the rent alongside a distance from the core of a city. So city had commercial, industrial and housing. Three parts in this graph which could say that how it is different from city center to its periphery to outskirts, and how economic factors are responsible for it. So remember, rise of von Thunen model, Weber model again comes in 1960s with William Alonso's concepts related to intra-urban spatial variations. Right? Here they again get importance that economic factors are the driving factors in new age technological situations. So the newer cities will be more determined by the economies, the economic rent model, right? So that is where locational analysis helps us to understand these economic models in internal structure of the cities in terms of these urban morphological transformations. And at last, what do we need to learn more is the application of all these models. So what you observe here, the difference between Western towns and Indian towns, with time, what has happened, the CBD has got less crowded and the outskirts are getting more crowded, while in Indian towns, still the central portions of the cities are more crowded, more in population density. We are still to lose density from the cities. People are not moving back, still people are coming to the cities. This is a major thing that you can see in terms of urban morphological transformation. And application of these models you can observe in various kinds of cities. For example, concentric ring theory in Burgess model, you see the city of Banaras, Kanchipuram, Gaya. Sectoral model, in all the iron and steel cities in India, you'll find out this sectoral model development, Chandigarh, Jaipur and other development cities. And then multiple nuclei model is applicable to virtually all mega cities of the world. If you observe, you will find this multiple nuclei model in the planned cities spatially. Right? But there are certain disadvantages, or we say limitations also, that Burgess model was purely on Chicago city. Hoyt's model was based on USA cities, and when it was applied to other cities, it was not in that way applicable. In certain areas only it was applicable. And Harris and Ullman gave the cities economically developed dimension only. So it was applicable more in the developed cities of the world, not in the underdeveloped cities of the world. So multiple nuclei theory is a theory that holds true in most of the bigger cities, or you say economically developed cities, not in the beginning or inception stage cities. So these are certain points in urban morphology that we need to understand through these theories of these great scholars, and also their limitations and their applications across the world, and examples from India and world as well. So now, when we have discussed in details the various aspects of urban morphology, theories of urban morphology, internal structure of cities, so in the sessions to come, we'll be talking more on different other aspects of urban settlement systems. So stay tuned. Stay safe, keep watching and learning, and don't forget to subscribe and share the videos with others as well.